She did not stand. She did not raise her voice. But in exactly 47 minutes, a man in a black suit would stand up from the back row of that church hall, walk to the front of the room, open a leather briefcase, and read 9 pages out loud that would destroy the woman who served that plate. 9 pages. That's all it took. But before we get to what those pages said, before the screaming, before the fainting, before every person in that room understood what had really been happening for the last 30 years, you need to know who Abena Quartey was, who her husband was, and why his sister hated her enough to humiliate her at his funeral. This story begins 31 years ago, in a city that wasn't Charlotte, in a life that looked nothing like the one Abena was living when that plate landed in front of her. Kwesi Quartey met Abena Mensah on a rainy afternoon in March of 1995 outside a library in Durham, North Carolina. He was 25, she was 22. He was finishing his MBA at Duke on a scholarship. She was working the front desk at the Durham County Public Library while taking night classes in accounting at North Carolina Central University. He came in soaking wet, no umbrella. His backpack was dripping on the carpet. He walked up to the desk and said, "I need a book on corporate tax law and also possibly a towel." She looked at him. Water was running down his forehead and dripping off his chin. His shirt was stuck to his chest. His shoes squeaked with every step. She didn't smile. She reached under the desk, pulled out a roll of paper towels she kept for coffee spills, and set it on the counter. "Tax law is in aisle 7. Towels are right here. You're getting my floor wet." He laughed. She didn't. But she watched him walk to aisle 7, and when he came back with 3 books stacked under his arm, still damp, still smiling, she said, "You can't check those out without a library card." "I don't have one." "Then I can't help you." "Can I get one?" "Do you have proof of address?" He pulled a crumpled Duke University housing letter from his wet backpack. She looked at it. She looked at him. "This is soaking wet." "So am I." She stared at him for 3 full seconds. Then she processed the card. She stamped his books. She handed them across the counter and said, "They're due in 2 weeks. If they come back wet, you're paying for them." "Fair." "And stop dripping on my floor." He came back every Tuesday, not because he needed books, because she was there. He would check out 1 book, return it the following week, and spend 45 minutes pretending to browse while actually watching her work. She noticed on the 3rd week, "Are you going to keep pretending to read the same shelf, or are you going to ask me to dinner?" "Would you say yes?" "Try and find out." He took her to a diner on 9th Street. They shared a plate of fries because neither of them had money for 2 meals. He talked about growing up in Kumasi, not the city in Ghana, but the nickname his grandmother had given their neighborhood in southeast Houston because so many Ghanaian families lived there. She talked about growing up in Silver Spring, Maryland, the daughter of a seamstress and a taxi driver, both from Accra. They were both broke, both ambitious, both the kind of people who measured their worth in effort, not possessions. By the end of that dinner, Kwesi knew 2 things. 1, Abena was the most honest person he had ever met. And 2, he was going to marry her. And it took him 8 months to convince her. She was careful, methodical. She didn't trust easily. She had watched her mother work 3 jobs to keep a roof over their heads after her father's taxi was hit by a truck and his back never recovered. She had learned early that love without stability was just a beautiful way to suffer. But Kwesi was persistent, not in a flashy way, in a quiet way. He showed up. Every Tuesday, every phone call he promised to make, every small thing he said he would do, he did. She said yes on a Tuesday, in the library. He was returning a book. She stamped it, looked up and said, "Fine, yes, but if you make me regret this, I'll charge you late fees for the rest of your life." They got married in January 1996 at a courthouse in Durham. No guests, no reception, just the 2 of them, a clerk, and a witness they pulled from the hallway, a janitor named Earl who cried harder than both of them combined. They moved to Charlotte 3 months later. Kwesi had a job offer from a small financial consulting firm downtown. Abena transferred her accounting credits to UNC Charlotte and finished her degree while working part-time at a tax preparation office in University City. The first 5 years were hard. They lived in a one-bedroom apartment on Central Avenue. The heating broke every winter. The landlord never fixed it. Kwesi would come home from work at 7, eat whatever Abena had cooked, usually rice and stew, sometimes just bread and eggs, and then sit at the kitchen table studying for his CPA exam until midnight. Abena studied beside him. Same table, same lamp. She got her accounting degree in 1998, on her CPA certification in 2000. By the time Kwesi started his own firm, Quarty Financial Group, in 2001, Abena was his first employee, his bookkeeper, his office manager, and his wife, all at the same time. For the same salary, which was nothing, because for the first 2 years the firm made almost no money. But they kept going. Kwesi had a gift. He could look at a company's books and see things other accountants missed. Inefficiencies, opportunities, tax strategies that saved clients hundreds of thousands of dollars. Word spread. Slowly at first, then faster. A referral from a Charlotte real estate developer led to a contract with a regional bank. That led to a relationship with a national insurance company. That led to a partnership with one of the largest healthcare systems in the Southeast. By 2010, Quarty Financial Group had 40 employees, an office on South Tryon Street, and annual revenue of $12 million. By 2015, it was $31 million. By 2020, it was $68 million. And by the time Kwesi Quarty died of a heart attack on a Saturday morning in June 2026, sitting in his favorite chair on the back porch of their home in Myers Park, a cup of coffee still warm in his hand, the firm was worth $94 million. Their personal estate, including properties, investments, and trust accounts, was valued at $147 million. But nobody knew that. Not the neighbors, not the employees beyond the senior partners, not the extended family, and certainly not Kwesi's sister, Vivian. Vivian Boateng was Kwesi's older sister by 4 years, and she had stayed in Houston when Kwesi moved to North Carolina. She married a man named Clarence Boateng in 1993, a car salesman who talked big and delivered small. They had 2 children. Clarence left in 2003. Vivian never remarried. She worked as an office administrator at a medical clinic in Midtown Houston. The pay was decent, the hours were long, and every year, as Kwesi's success grew, Vivian's resentment grew with it. She never said it directly. She didn't have to. It lived in the comments. Must be nice to live in a big house in Charlotte while your sister's out here working herself to death. You'd think with all that money, Kwesi could help his own blood a little more. I'm not jealous. I'm just saying, family should take care of family. Kwesi did help. He paid Vivian's mortgage off in 2012, and he set up college funds for her 2 children. He sent her $5,000 every Christmas without being asked. He flew her to Charlotte for holidays. He never once mentioned any of it publicly or made her feel small for needing it. But Vivian didn't see generosity. She saw obligation. She saw a brother who had more than she did. And she decided, somewhere deep in a place she never examined, that the reason she had less was not circumstance. It was Abena. That woman trapped him, Vivian would say to anyone who would listen. Before Abena, Kwesi would have moved back to Houston. He would have started his business here, with his family. Instead, she dragged him to North Carolina and kept him away from us. It wasn't true. None of it was true. Charlotte was Kwesi's choice. The firm was Kwesi's vision. Abena was his partner, not his captor. But the truth didn't matter to Vivian. The story she had told herself for 30 years was more real to her than anything Kwesi could say. And Abena knew it. She had known it since 1997, the first time Vivian visited Charlotte and looked around their tiny apartment and said, "Well, I guess this is what Kwesi settled for." Abena said nothing that day. She said nothing the next visit, when Vivian criticized her cooking. She said nothing the visit after that, when Vivian told Kwesi, in front of Abena, that he could have done better. She never fought back. She never argued. She never complained to Kwesi. Not because she was weak, but because she understood something Vivian never would, that responding to cruelty with cruelty only creates more of it. And Abena had decided, very early in her life, that she would not carry bitterness. It was too heavy, and she had too much work to do. Kwesi died on June 14, 2026, a Saturday. Abena found him on the porch at 7:43 a.m. His coffee was still warm. His face was peaceful. His hand was resting on the arm of the chair where he always rested it. She sat beside him for 20 minutes before she called anyone. She held his hand, the same hand that had been dripping wet in a library in Durham 31 years ago. The same hand that had held hers at the courthouse. The same hand that had signed every check, shaken every client's hand, built every piece of the life they shared. She didn't scream. She didn't fall apart. She said, "Thank you, my love, for everything." Then she called 911. The funeral was held 8 days later at Grace Covenant Church in Ballantyne, a suburb on the south side of Charlotte. Kwesi had been a member for 18 years. He had donated the funds for the children's wing. He had taught Sunday school twice a month. The pastor, Reverend Dankwa, had known him personally for over a decade. 200 people attended: business associates, neighbors, church members, employees from the firm, friends from the community. Vivian flew in from Houston with her 2 adult children, a son named Derek, 29, and a daughter named Priscilla, 26. Vivian arrived on Wednesday, 3 days before the funeral. She showed up at the Myers Park house with 2 suitcases and an attitude that made the air in the house feel heavier. "I'll be staying in the master bedroom," she said, standing in the foyer with her bags at her feet. "It's only right. He was my brother." Abena looked at her. 68 years old, widow of 3 days, eyes still swollen from crying in private. "Of course, Vivian. I'll move my things to the guest room." "Good." Abena moved her pillow and her nightgown to the guest room, the room where she and Kwesi used to put fresh flowers for visitors. She slept in that room for the next 5 nights, in a bed that wasn't hers, in a house she had lived in for 19 years, because her husband's sister told her to. If you're watching this right now and your blood is starting to heat up, good. Hold on to that feeling, because Vivian is just getting started, and what she doesn't know about what's coming at that funeral, well, that's why you need to keep watching. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that bell, because fate has a plan for this one, and you're going to want to see every second of it. Vivian took over the funeral planning. She didn't ask. She announced, "I've spoken with Reverend Dankwa. The service will be at 2 o'clock. I've selected the music. I've written the program. I've arranged the flowers." Abena had already planned everything. She had chosen the hymns Kwesi loved. She had written the obituary herself. She had selected the flowers, white lilies, his favorite, and confirmed the catering with a restaurant in South End that Kwesi had eaten at every Friday for 15 years. Vivian changed all of it. She replaced the hymns with songs Abena didn't recognize. She rewrote the obituary to emphasize the Houston years and barely mentioned Charlotte. She canceled Abena's flower order and chose red roses instead, and she replaced the catering. "I've ordered food from a place Derek found," Vivian said. "It's cheaper, and frankly, I don't trust whatever overpriced restaurant you were going to use." Abena stood in the kitchen, holding the cancellation confirmation on her phone. She looked at it for a long time. "Vivian, he was my husband, and he was my brother, my blood. We shared a mother. What did you share? A marriage certificate?" The words hit like a slap. Abena put the phone down. She turned and walked to the guest room. She closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed. She did not cry. She had already used up her tears. What she felt now was something older than sadness, something quieter, a patience that came from 31 years of weathering Vivian's hatred without letting it change who she was. She picked up her phone and made one call. "Nana, it's Abina." "Abina, I'm so sorry about Kwesi. How are you holding up?" "I'm holding. Nana, I need to ask you something. The will. Kwesi's will. When were you planning to read it?" A pause. "I was going to wait until after the funeral. Perhaps the following week. Give you time to grieve." "No. I want you to read it at the repast. After the service. In front of everyone." A longer pause. "Abena, are you sure? That's unusual." "I'm sure. Kwesi was sure. He told me 6 months ago exactly how he wanted this handled. He said, 'When the time comes, let them all hear it, every word, in front of everyone.' Those were his words, Nana, not mine." "Then I'll be there, with the documents. Thank you." She hung up. She lay back on the guest room bed. She stared at the ceiling. "I hope you know what you're doing, my love," she whispered. The morning of the funeral, and Vivian did something that crossed a line even she should have recognized. Abena came downstairs at 8 o'clock, wearing a simple black dress, modest, elegant, the kind of dress Kwesi always said made her look like a queen. She wore small pearl earrings he had given her on their 20th anniversary. Her hair was wrapped in a black silk headscarf. No makeup, no pretense. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman in grief. Vivian was in the kitchen. She looked Abena up and down. "You're wearing that?" "Yes." "It's plain. You look like the help, but I suppose that's fitting." Derek, Vivian's son, was sitting at the kitchen table. He looked up from his phone. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. Priscilla, Vivian's daughter, walked in from the living room. She had heard. She put her hand on her mother's arm. "Mom, I don't." "Don't what?" "I'm just being honest. Kwesi deserved a wife who looked the part, not someone who dresses like she's going to sweep the church." Abena poured herself a cup of coffee. She drank it standing at the counter. She did not respond. She finished the cup. She rinsed it. She set it in the drying rack. Then she walked out of the kitchen and sat on the front porch. Alone. In the same chair where Kwesi had died 8 days ago. She sat there for 1 hour and 14 minutes until it was time to leave for the church. Derek found her there. He stood in the doorway for a moment. Then he walked out and sat in the chair beside her. "Aunt Abena." "Yes, baby. I'm sorry about my mother. She's always been like this. But today is wrong. Today she should be better." Abena reached over and patted his hand. "Your mother is your mother, and she's hurting too. She lost her brother. That doesn't give her the right to—" "No, it doesn't. But I've learned something in my life, Derek. When someone is cruel to you, it tells you everything about them and nothing about you. I stopped letting your mother's words define me a long time ago." Derek looked at her, really looked at her, and he saw something in her face that he had never noticed before. A depth, a steadiness, a power that had nothing to do with money or status or volume. It was the power of a woman who knew exactly who she was and had never needed anyone else to confirm it. "Uncle Kwesi was lucky to have you," Derek said. "We were lucky to have each other." They sat in silence until the car came. The funeral service was beautiful. Reverend Dankwa spoke for 20 minutes about Kwesi's character, his generosity, his faith. The choir sang 3 hymns, the ones Vivian had chosen, not the ones Kwesi loved, but Abena let it go. This was not the hill. The hill was coming. Kwesi's business partner, a man named Franklin Odom, gave a eulogy that made half the church cry. He talked about the early days, the one-room office, the borrowed furniture, the nights they worked until 3 in the morning, fueled by gas station coffee and stubbornness. Kwesi used to say, "A man's legacy is not what he built. It's who he built it with." And every single person in this room knows that the person he built everything with was Abena. Franklin looked directly at Abena when he said it. 200 heads turned. Abena sat in the front row, hands folded in her lap, tears running silently down her face. Vivian, sitting 3 seats away, did not turn. Her jaw was tight. Her arms were crossed. Her eyes were fixed on a point above the altar, as if she could will herself not to hear. After the service, the congregation moved to the church fellowship hall for the repast. Long tables covered in white cloths, folding chairs, paper plates. The food Vivian had ordered, cheap catering from a chain restaurant. Aluminum trays of dry chicken, overcooked green beans, instant mashed potatoes, and store-bought rolls. 200 people who had come to honor a man who had built a $94 million company were eating off paper plates in a church basement. Abena sat at the head table, the widow's seat. Vivian sat beside her. Derek and Priscilla sat across from them. Vivian served herself first, a full plate. Chicken breast, greens, potatoes, 2 rolls. She ate with the appetite of someone who had organized the event and felt entitled to enjoy it. Then she served Abena. She placed a paper plate in front of her sister-in-law. On it, a chicken bone, picked nearly clean, the kind you'd find at the bottom of the tray after everyone else had served themselves. A spoonful of rice so small it barely covered the center of the plate, and a piece of bread that was stale and curling. She set it down in front of Abena with a smile, not a kind smile, a deliberate one, the smile of a woman who wanted everyone to see. "Here you go," Vivian said. "This should be enough for you." The people closest to the head table saw it. A woman named Mrs. Appia, who had known Kwesi for 20 years, put her fork down. Franklin Odom, sitting 2 tables away, I stopped mid-sentence. Reverend Dankwa, standing near the kitchen door, turned and stared. Nobody said anything. The discomfort spread through the room like a cold draft. People shifted in their chairs. Eyes darted. Conversations died mid-word. Abena looked at the plate. She looked at Vivian. She looked at the 200 faces watching her. She picked up the stale bread. She tore it in half. She ate it slowly, chewing each bite with the calm of a woman who had been eating Vivian's cruelty for 31 years and had long ago stopped tasting it. She ate the spoonful of rice. She left the chicken bone. And then she folded her hands in her lap and waited. Vivian leaned over, close enough that only Abena could hear. "This is what you deserve. Scraps. You took my brother from me. You kept him in Charlotte. You kept him away from his family. You poisoned him against us. And now he's gone. And I promise you, whatever he left behind, it belongs to his family. Not to you." Abena didn't look at her. She looked straight ahead. "We'll see, Vivian." "We'll see?" "There's nothing to see. I've already spoken to a lawyer in Houston. We're contesting whatever little will he had. You'll be lucky to keep that house by the time I'm done." Abena almost smiled. Almost. "We'll see." 43 minutes passed. People ate. People talked in low voices. The mood was wrong. Everyone could feel it. A funeral repast should be warm. This one felt like a courtroom waiting for a verdict. At exactly 4:17 p.m., a man stood up from the back row of chairs. He was tall, 62 years old, silver hair cut close to the scalp, a dark brown skin with the polish of a man who had spent 4 decades in boardrooms and courthouses. He wore a black suit, not flashy, not cheap, the kind of suit that said nothing and meant everything. He carried a leather briefcase in his left hand. His name was Nana Ofori-Atta, senior partner at Ofori-Atta, Graves and Associates, one of the most respected estate attorneys in the state of North Carolina. He had handled Kwesi Kwartey's legal affairs for 23 years. He walked to the front of the room. His shoes were the only sound. Every conversation stopped. Every fork was set down. 200 people turned to watch a man they didn't know walk to the front of a church fellowship hall like he owned it. He stopped beside the head table. He set his briefcase on a chair. He opened it, and he removed a thick document bound in a blue legal cover. "Good afternoon," he said. His voice was deep, measured, the voice of a man who had delivered life-changing news hundreds of times and had learned that the quieter you speak, the harder they listen. "My name is Nana Ofori-Atta. I was, the personal attorney and estate counsel for Kwesi Kwartey for the last 23 years. I am here at the express written instruction of Mr. Kwartey himself, who specified in his final testament that his will be read publicly at his funeral repast in the presence of his family, friends, and community." He paused. His eyes swept the room. "What I am about to read is the last will and testament of Kwesi Asante Kwartey, executed and notarized on December 11th, 2025, approximately 6 months before his passing. It is legally binding, comprehensive, and final. There are no prior versions that supersede it. There are no pending amendments." He looked directly at Vivian when he said that last sentence. She didn't catch it. She was too busy whispering to Priscilla. "What's this about? Who is this man? I didn't arrange this." Priscilla put her hand on her mother's arm. "Mom, be quiet." Nana opened the document. He adjusted his reading glasses, and he began. "I, Kwesi Asante Kwartey, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils." The room was silent, the kind of silent where you can hear the air conditioning cycling through the vents overhead. Article 1. To my beloved wife, Abena Mensah Kwartey, I leave the following. He paused. He turned the page. The primary residence at 4812 Runnymede Lane, Charlotte, North Carolina, free and clear of all encumbrances. Vivian rolled her eyes. Obviously, she lives there. Nana continued without acknowledging her. The vacation property at 118 Oceanfront Drive, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. Vivian blinked. She didn't know about a vacation property. The investment property at 2200 Peachtree Road, NE, Atlanta, Georgia, a 12-unit residential complex, fully leased, generating annual rental income of approximately $780,000. Vivian's mouth opened. All shares and equity holdings in Kwartey Financial Group, LLC, representing a 92% ownership stake in the firm, valued as of the most recent independent appraisal at approximately $86.4 million. The room started buzzing. Low murmurs. People looking at each other. Mrs. Appia grabbed the arm of the woman beside her. Nana turned another page. The personal investment portfolio held at Vanguard, Charles Schwab, and J.P. Morgan Private Bank, collectively valued at approximately $29.3 million. Vivian's hand was on the table. Her fingers were spread wide. She was gripping the edge like the room was tilting. The charitable trust established in 2018, the Kwartey Community Foundation, of which Mrs. Abena Kwartey shall serve as sole trustee and chair, with an endowment of $11.2 million, designated for educational scholarships, community development, and health services in the Charlotte metropolitan area. All personal effects, including but not limited to vehicles, jewelry, artwork, furniture, and memorabilia. Nana paused. He looked up from the document. He looked at the room. Then he read the next line. In total, the estate assets designated for Mrs. Abena Kwartey are valued at approximately $147 million. The room erupted, not in applause, in shock, in gasps, in the sound of 200 people processing a number they never expected to hear in a church fellowship hall on a Saturday afternoon. Vivian stood up. Her chair scraped against the tile floor. The sound cut through everything. That's impossible. That can't... He didn't have $147 million? No, that's not right. There must be another version, an older will, something before she got to him and changed everything. Nana looked at her with the patience of a man who had seen this exact reaction hundreds of times. There is no other version, Mrs. Boateng. This will was executed in my presence with 2 independent witnesses and notarized by a licensed notary public. It is the sole valid testament. She manipulated him. At the end, he was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly. Mr. Quarty was examined by his personal physician 3 days before executing this will. The physician's certification of mental competency is attached as Exhibit A. Your brother was in full possession of his faculties. Vivian's chest was heaving. Her face was twisted. But what about U.S.? What about his family? His own blood? Nana turned 2 pages. His expression didn't change. Article 2. Bequests to extended family. Vivian leaned forward. To my sister, Vivian Boateng, I leave the following. Every person in the room held their breath. So, a framed photograph of our mother, which currently hangs in my office at Quarty Financial Group, and the family Bible, which belonged to our grandmother, Akosua Quarty, and which has been in my possession since 2004. That was it. A photograph and a Bible. No money, no property, no shares, no trust, no percentage, nothing. Vivian's legs gave out. She sat back down in her chair hard. The chair slid back 2 inches from the impact. Her face was gray. Her hands were shaking. No, she whispered. No, that's not, he wouldn't, I'm his sister. Nana waited 3 seconds. Then he continued. Article 2, Section B. To my nephew Derek Boateng, I leave a trust fund in the amount of $500,000 to be administered by Ofori Atta, Graves and Associates, accessible upon his 30th birthday. With the stipulation that the funds be used for education, home ownership, or the establishment of a legitimate business enterprise. Derek sat completely still. His eyes were wide. His hands were in his lap. Article 2, Section C. To my niece Priscilla Boateng, I leave a trust fund in the same amount and under the same terms as described for Derek Boateng. Priscilla's eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table and grabbed Derek's hand. Article 2, Section D. To the employees of Quarty Financial Group, I leave a profit-sharing pool of $4 million to be distributed equally among all current employees who have been with the firm for 3 or more years. A woman at one of the back tables, an employee, covered her mouth with both hands. Nana turned to the final page. He read slowly, deliberately. Each word landing like a stone dropped into still water. Article 3. Personal statement. He cleared his throat. This section is written in Mr. Quarty's own words. He asked that I read it exactly as written. The room went still. To everyone in this room, I want you to know that everything I built with one person, my wife, Abina. She was my first employee, my first partner, my first investor. She put her entire savings, $6,000, into the firm in 2001 when no bank would lend us a dime. She answered phones, she balanced books, she cleaned the office, she cooked dinner for our clients when we couldn't afford a restaurant. She never once asked for recognition, she never once demanded credit. She simply worked, beside me, every day, for 30 years. Abina's hands were trembling in her lap. Tears were falling freely now. She didn't wipe them. If I am worth anything today, it is because of her, not despite her, because of her. Nana's voice was steady, but the room was not. People were crying. Franklin Odom had his face in his hands. Reverend Dankwa was holding his Bible to his chest with both arms. To my sister Vivian, I love you. I have always loved you. I paid your mortgage because you're my sister. I paid for your children's education because they're my blood. I sent you money every Christmas because family takes care of family. But I am not blind. I saw how you treated my wife. For 31 years I watched you belittle her, dismiss her, insult her, talk about her behind her back. And when I asked you, multiple times, to stop, you told me I was being dramatic. You told me Abina was too sensitive. You told me she was turning me against my own family. Vivian was shaking. her whole body. She looked like a woman watching a building collapse in slow motion and realizing she was inside it. The truth is, Abena never said a word against you. Not once. In 31 years, she never asked me to choose. She never gave me ultimatums. She never spoke badly about you to me or anyone else. She simply endured, with grace, with patience, with a dignity that I have spent my entire life trying to be worthy of. Nana paused. He looked at Vivian. Then he read the final paragraph. So this is my answer, Vivian. This is what 31 years of silence earned. Not vengeance, not cruelty, just the truth. Spoken out loud, in front of everyone, so that no one can ever rewrite it. Abena is my legacy. She always was. And now, finally, everyone knows it. Nana closed the document. The room was silent for 11 seconds. 11 seconds of absolute, crushing, ringing silence. Then Vivian broke. She didn't scream. She didn't yell. She made a sound, a low, guttural moan, like something tearing apart inside her that had been held together by anger for 3 decades. She put both hands over her face. Her shoulders shook. Priscilla put her arm around her mother. Derek sat frozen, staring at the table. Abena stood up slowly. She smoothed her black dress. She wiped her face with both hands. She looked at Vivian, this woman who had hated her for 31 years, who had served her scraps on a paper plate at her own husband's funeral, who had told her she looked like the help, who had taken her bedroom, who had rewritten the obituary, who had canceled the flowers. And she looked at her for a long time. And then she did something that made every person in that room stop breathing. She walked to Vivian. She put her hand on Vivian's shoulder, and she said, "You are still my sister. That has not changed." Vivian looked up. Her face was ruined. Mascara, tears, snot, everything. She looked at Abena's hand on her shoulder. She looked at Abena's face. "How?" Vivian whispered. "How can you say that to me? After everything Because Kwesi would want me to, and because carrying hate is heavier than carrying grief, and I am already carrying enough." Vivian broke again, harder this time. She grabbed Abena's hand and held it against her face and sobbed. Derek stood up from the table. He walked around to his aunt. He put his arms around both of them. Priscilla stood. She joined. 4 people. Holding each other in a church fellowship hall, over paper plates and cheap catering and a will that had just rewritten a family's history. Franklin Odom was the first to start clapping. Slowly. Then Mrs. Appia. Then Reverend Dankwa. Then the whole room. 200 people on their feet, applauding not the money, not the will, not the revelation, but the woman who had endured 31 years of cruelty and responded with grace. Abena closed her eyes. She let the sound wash over her. And for one moment, just one, she felt Kwesi beside her. Not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a warmth. A hand on the small of her back. A voice that said without words, I told you they would see." Nana Ofori-Atta packed his briefcase quietly. He shook Abena's hand on his way out. "He was a remarkable man," Nana said. "Yes," Abena said. "Not he was. And you, Mrs. Quarty, are a remarkable woman. I'm just a woman who kept showing up. That's all it ever was." Nana smiled. The kind of smile that says he's heard powerful people say powerful things his whole life. But this was different. This was the real thing. He walked out of the fellowship hall. His car was parked in the back. A simple black sedan. Nothing flashy. Just like Kwesi would have wanted. The repast continued for another 2 hours. People ate. People talked. People came to Abena's table one by one to hug her, to thank her, to tell her stories about Kwesi that she had never heard. Clients he had helped without charging. Employees he had mentored. Families he had quietly supported when no one was looking. Every story was the same. Kwesi gave. Kwesi showed up. Kwesi did the work, just like Abena. And Derek came to her before the family left for the house. He stood in front of her, hands in his pockets, looking more like a boy than a 29-year-old man. Aunt Abena, the trust fund. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Your uncle loved you. I want to use it right. I want to start something. A business. Something real. Abena looked at him the way she had looked at Kwesi 31 years ago in a library in Durham, studying, measuring, deciding. Come see me next month. We'll talk about it properly, with a plan, with numbers. And if it's real, if you're serious, I'll help you. Derek nodded. His eyes were wet. He hugged her, hard. The kind of hug that says things words can't. Vivian was the last to leave the fellowship hall. She stood in the doorway, her coat over her arm, her face swollen and raw. And she looked back at Abena, who was helping the church ladies clear the tables. Abena. Abena looked up. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, but you have it. Why? Because 31 years is long enough to be angry. And I was never angry, Vivian. I was just waiting for you to see me. Vivian pressed her lips together. She nodded once. She walked out. Whether Vivian changed after that day, truly changed, deeply changed, is something only time will tell. People don't undo 31 years of bitterness in one afternoon. But she flew back to Houston the next morning, and for the first time in 31 years, she called Abena from the airport. Not Kwesi. Abena. I landed safe, she said. Good. I'll call you next week. Okay, Vivian. I'm sorry. I know. That phone call lasted 11 seconds, and it was the longest honest conversation they had ever had. Abena drove home from the church alone. She pulled into the driveway of the Myers Park house. She sat in the car for a while. The house was big, too big for one person, but it was full of Kwesi. His books, his coffee mugs, his chair on the porch, the scuff marks his shoes had left on the hardwood floor near the kitchen. She walked inside. She walked to the porch. She sat in his chair. His coffee mug was still in the kitchen. She brought it out. She held it. The sun was setting over Charlotte. The sky was orange and pink and fading to purple at the edges. The kind of sky Kwesi loved. The kind he would have pointed at and said, "Look at that, Abena. God's showing off again." She held the mug. She watched the sky. "They heard you, my love," she said. Every word." If Vivian had given Abena a full plate at that funeral, the will still would have been read. The truth still would have come out. Kwesi had planned it that way. He wanted the world to know who his wife was. Not because she needed them to know, but because he needed to say it. One last time, in front of everyone. But the scraps on that paper plate, the chicken bone, the stale bread, the spoonful of rice, that made it mean something different. It turned a legal reading into a reckoning. It turned a dead man's words into a living judgment. It made 200 people understand, in a single moment, the difference between a woman who takes and a woman who gives. Abena Quartey never asked for recognition. She never demanded credit. She never fought back against the woman who tried to make her small for 31 years. She just kept showing up. She just kept giving. She just kept building. Quietly, faithfully, without applause. And in the end, fate did what fate always does. It showed up too, with 9 pages, a leather briefcase, and the truth. If you want to see who fate visits next, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because in these stories, the ones who serve scraps at funerals, they always lose. And the ones who eat those scraps with dignity, they always rise. Not because they fought for it, but because they earned it. One quiet day.
Años exactamente, bueno, no exactamente, ¿no? Un grupo de soñadores en La Paz decidió fundar algo que trascendería generaciones. El glorioso Club Bolívar. No imaginaron que... Oye, me he esforzado al hacer el discurso. ¿Qué ponen ZZ, chat? Basta, me he esforzado, se los juro que me he esforzado, bro, basta. Por favor, me he esforzado en el discurso, respéteme un poquito, chat. Bueno, igual lo voy a leer, me la chupan, la verdad. Chat, nefastos. Son unos envidiosos, ¿saben? Son unos envidiosos. ¿En qué me quedé? No imaginaron que ese nombre se convertiría en un sinónimo de grandeza, lucha y de orgullo nacional. 101 años después, Bolívar no es solo un club, es un sentimiento que se hereda, que se sufre y se celebra. Últimamente sufrimos mucho por Robato, ¿no? Es el latido de miles de hinchas que en cada victoria y en cada caída nunca abandonan, ¿verdad? Nomás. Porque ser celeste no es una elección, es una forma de vivir. Muy bien, qué lindo, un aplauso. Bravo, bravo. Muchachos, tremendo discurso. Buenas noches, Dieguito, ¿cómo estás? Por lo menos ponte tu chompita, pues un busito para leer el discurso. A ver, cállate, Gabo, ¿vos quieres ser baneado? Este discurso lo he hecho en mi cama, pensando en lo que es ser bolivarista, la verdad. Un aplauso, por favor, y con ayuda también del gran ChatGPT. Un aplauso para ChatGPT. Ah, ¿cuál era la finalización de un ratito? Dice, que estos 101 años sean solo el comienzo de muchas más llenos de alegría. Felicidades, Academia. Felicidades, Bolívar. ¡Bravo! Aplausos para ChatGPT, muchachos. Para vos no, dice. Buenas noches, muchachos, ¿cómo están? Gracias por estar aquí, perdón por prender tan tarde. La verdad estaba viendo mi serie, estaba viendo el regreso de Justin Bieber. Bueno, toda la tarde me vi fútbol, hasta vi el partido del Tigre. Vi el partido de River, vi el partido de Oriente, las declaraciones de Martins, tremendo lo de Martins, bebé, le tiró palo a Villegas, pero bien tirado. Huevada, en su cama lo hizo todo pajeado pensando en el... No, ¿qué dice este Arielito? Oye, ¿quiénes vamos, no? Mi sobrino de quién redacta mejor. Dile eso a ChatGPT, yo no he redactado. ¿Qué me estás molestando a mí? Felicidades. Qué basado. Pues la verdad nomás. ¿Qué quieren que les diga? A ver, ¿qué les puedo decir, muchachos? Yo no publiqué nada en mi página, la verdad no hice nada estos días. Han sido momentos difíciles. Bien triste, ¿no? Mentira. Pero no, muchachos, bueno. Quiero felicitar a todos los que son bolivaristas. Y hoy en día más que nunca, ¿no? Que es difícil ser bolivarista. En el sentido de todo el contexto que estamos pasando con el técnico. Pero si lo ven por el otro lado también, hay que sentirnos orgullosos porque hemos llegado a estos 101 años. Creo que como la institución mejor parada, tanto económicamente, futbolísticamente y dirigencialmente diría, pero no, creo que no, ahí nos falta, ¿no? Ese eslabón para poder ser una institución sólida. Y como ayer creo que lo decía Dardo Gómez en su publicación en el Cholet, que Dios mío, ¿de dónde cagan tanta plata, bebés? Más fuegos pirotécnicos que en el aniversario de La Paz, no mames. Tremendo, felicidades a los del Cholet, y a ver si pasan pues algunos moneys. No mentira. Que dijo que el dirigente tiene que estar siempre al lado del hincha, y eso es mucha verdad, y no es por darle palo a Claure, porque tendrá sus funciones, las cosas que tienen que hacer, pero creo que por esa parte que estoy... Uy, ¿qué? No, todavía no va a arrancar la fiesta, Tucán, tranquilo. y por esa parte creo que está bien, ¿no? Está bien, y bueno, se vienen unas futuras elecciones, donde el principal candidato es Dardo Gómez, a seguir manejando lo que es este club tan bonito que es Bolívar, ¿no? Por detrás, obviamente, yo creo que tiene que haber gente que lo asesore. Espera, ¿mi gatita se echó pipí? No, ya, más bien. Me ha asustado, chicos, la verdad, me ha asustado. Ya saben ustedes, rayada está mi gatita últimamente, ¿no? No, ¿qué dice este Eddie Pox? Y bueno, muchachos, nos espera, creo, un futuro grandioso. Yo lo dije, creo que esta es una oportunidad ya con el Stadium de una vez establecernos como un club de fútbol, pero serio, y fuera de ser autosostenible, que se proyecte a más, ¿me entiendes? No estancarnos en solo ser un club boliviano, sino ya empezar a soñar con, no sé, a ver, por ejemplo, la venta de butacas en el estadio, venta de marketing, merchandising, que se vaya ampliando más las sociedades, ¿me entienden? O sea, yo creo que si un una cabeza maneja bien todo eso, creo que podemos despegar, ¿me entiendes? Y no estar ahí creando leyes de mierda con el gobierno, pidiendo perdón para que nos perdonen los impuestos, ¿no? De los gatos, ¿no? Entonces, creo que, o ser un club que está a punto de desaparecer, como Wilstermann, que desapareció de la liga, pero está a punto de desaparecer, pero absolutamente de todo el fútbol. O ser clubes que le están mangueando el auspicio a la UTB y chupándosela al presidente de la federación por subsistir. Entonces, creo que Bolívar es muy grande y tiene, creo que, trascender. Eso es lo que nos falta, trascender, dar ese pasito para trascender y lograr los objetivos que siempre hemos querido, ya sea una Copa Sudamericana o una Copa Libertadores, ¿no? Y siempre tiene que ir de la mano. Estos últimos años, creo que es la verdad, se han ido alejando a las generaciones bolivaristas, al hincha común, al hincha fanático, a todos los tipos de hinchas se han ido alejando del club por justamente el mal trabajo que se ha ido realizando estos últimos años en Bolívar. ¿Qué decía Valdivia? Creo que dijo que dejó un club autosostenible. O sea, sí, no vamos a decir que no, ¿no? Económicamente creo que se dejó un club autosostenible. A ver, Solís, no pidas Gartic. Ya les he dicho qué cosa de Gartic. Hoy día es aniversario del club. Déjame hablar a ver de mi club, Solís. Igual en el grupo de WhatsApp, no Tucán, jugaremos Gartic, no quiero dibujar huevadas, déjame, no voy a jugar Gartic, ya les he dicho, si quieren dibujar, agarren un cuadernito y empiezan a dibujar sus huevadas, no me vengan a molestar a mí con su Gartic. Saludos Reyisita, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo bien? Gartic, temática Bolívar, no, métanse su Gartic por el poto, ya les he dicho. Y bueno muchachos, ¿en qué estaba? Es que me enerva muchachos, cada vez Gartic, basta, no quiero jugar Gartic, vayan a jugar Gartic con sus minas. Goclingo, huevadas hablas, ya, espera, ¿qué hables Ignacio Loza, Auri? Y bueno muchachos, creo que sí, yo me quedo con eso. Este martes tenemos un partido muy importante en lo económico, para mí muy importante para ver qué está el club de cara a este año, porque creo que es indispensable ganarle a ese equipo. En Copa Libertadores, obviamente por los 3 puntos y más, pero pensando a futuro, creo que es muy importante que se vea buen fútbol, ¿no? Y que la gente ya esté un poquito más tranquila con el funcionamiento del equipo. Ayer contra Bebé, bueno, el día sábado contra Bebé, se jugó un buen partido, no digo que un malo partido, creo que empezaron a aparecer personas, o bueno, jugadores que no estaban apareciendo, como es el Papu Velázquez y muchos más, ¿no? Entonces, interesante. Y bueno, apareció Cauterucho, que en el partido de Libertadores no había aparecido ni de sombra. Parece que Cauterucho solo le mete goles a equipos como ABB. Y preocupa un poquito eso, ¿no? Hoy ganó el Tigre, está puntero con nosotros. Nacional Potosí también está compartiendo la punta con nosotros y muchos más que vienen bien entonándose en lo que es este torneo, ¿no? Que empezó retardísimo y creo que nos va a pesar no solo a nosotros, sino a los demás equipos que están participando en copas internacionales, ya sea Blooming el caso, ¿no? Y otros más. Mete gol equipos chicos como Dorni, pero Dorni ni jugó. ¿Qué dicen, chicos? ¿Qué dicen? La era Robato es la peor de todos los tiempos, bebé. Tomando en cuenta el centenario que es una vez en la vida. Sí, es la peor. La peor. De los últimos 10 años, ¿se podría decir que lo de Robato es lo peor que nos pudo pasar? A ver, piensen. Es que con lo que me dice el técnico de... A ver, ustedes pónganse a pensar, si tu técnico te dice que el objetivo era solo clasificar a Libertadores y que no estaba obligado a ser campeón, puta, ahí me la bajó mal, amigos, sinceramente, me la bajó mal. Podía aceptarle todas sus huevadas y todo, pero cuando dijo eso, es como que hizo sentir me hizo sentir un club más del montón, ¿me entiendes? Un Nacional Potosí, una Aurora, no sé, otros equipos bien X, así me hizo sentir, la verdad. Por eso yo vuelvo a repetir, yo voy a hablar de lo que veo en la cancha, y este martes si es que Bolívar gana se va a aplaudir, y si es que Bolívar pierde, bueno, también se va a criticar algunas cosas, y si han fallado en algunas cosas, igual vamos a criticarlas, vamos a observarlas y vamos a dar nuestro criterio. Pero fuera de eso, Robato no puede venir a